Welcome to Tardisian Files. In today's episode, we will be pondering one of the first mysteries that have been left over by the 60th anniversary specials and the 2023 Christmas special. Who are the Toymaker's Legions? Before we get into the Toymaker's Legions, we need to understand the history of the Celestial Toymaker. The Toymaker's origins are unknown, so whether he's a being from another universe, a being from the main universe, or a being from the pre-universe is up for debate. Though one thing is for certain, he's an ancient being whose powers defy the laws of physics. Trying to pinpoint his origin is especially difficult as revealed by the 6th Doctor in the audio drama Nightmare Fair, as the Toymaker himself actively plays misleading games with his own past. However, his reality-bending powers and non-linear relationship with time indicates that he is one of the Great Old Ones, which are a group of beings that the Elder Gods such as Fenric, the Eternals, and the Guardians of Time all belong to. In the days before the Toymaker had met the Doctor, he succeeded in creating a dimension of his own, the Toy Room. This dimension served a similar purpose to the Elder Gods' board game dimension, as the Toymaker spent centuries on Earth sampling its games and recreating nearly unwinnable versions in the Toy Room. He would then lure victims into the Toy Room and trap them when they lost to him. Some accounts suggest that his victims would be turned into sentient toys, becoming puppets in the Toymaker's schemes. Other accounts indicate that they just became acolytes for the Toymaker to use in later schemes. The Doctor once described the Toy Room as a hollow beneath the under-universe. By 1925, the Toy Room had a portable portal, which was housed inside a wooden toy box emblazoned with the 4 suits in cards. This box would later serve as the Toymaker's prison upon his defeat by the 14th and 15th Doctors in 2023. If the Toymaker were to lose to his opponents, the Toy Room would be destroyed. However, the Toymaker cared very little about this, as the dimension housing the Toy Room would still survive, and he would simply create another, though he would also vow to destroy the person who cost him his previous Toy Room. The Toymaker would go on to have several encounters with various different incarnations of the Doctor throughout both of their respective lives. There are some accounts that the Doctor in his academy days encountered the Toymaker when travelling with school friends Rallon and Millennia, both of whom would go on to lose in the Toymaker's games and become trapped in the Toy Room. However, during this encounter, the Toymaker allowed the Doctor to escape, knowing that he'd become a worthy opponent as he matured. The first TV adventure that we saw the Toymaker in was in his supposed rematch with the First Doctor from the first encounter that he'd had with the young Time Lord, though the rules invoked by the 14th Doctor in the Giggle indicate otherwise. Regardless, in the first televised story, The Celestial Toymaker, the Toymaker drew the TARDIS to the Toy Room with the First Doctor, Stephen Taylor, and Dodo Chaplet on board. The Toymaker's original plan was to make the Toy Room vanish at the moment of the trio's victory, so that the Doctor couldn't complete his final winning move in the final game without destroying the Toy Room, killing them all. All this was a bid for the Toymaker to trap the Doctor and his companions, and to take the TARDIS as a most amusing toy, as he put it. However, the Doctor outwitted the Toymaker by mimicking the Toymaker's voice and commanding his playing piece to move, telling Stephen to hit the preset controls the instant he made this move. This proves to be successful. The Doctor is able to psychokinetically move the playing piece without having to touch it, and the TARDIS is able to leave the moment the toy room is destroyed. At this moment, the Toymaker and the Doctor stood at 1-0 in the Doctor's favour. However, this would not be the last time that the Celestial Toymaker would cause havoc for the Doctor and his friends. In the novel Divided Loyalties, the Toymaker encountered the Fifth Doctor, and it was here that it was revealed that the Toymaker had possessed the body of Rallon, the friend of the Doctor's who'd been trapped in the toy room during the Doctor's first encounter with the Toymaker in his youth. In the novel, Rallon's body was dying, and the Toymaker set out to absorb the Fifth Doctor as his new host. This time, the Toymaker aimed to use his games to divide the TARDIS crew by driving a wedge between the Doctor, Tegan, Adric and Nyssa. However, Rallon, whose consciousness had persisted this entire time, forced his body to undergo several consecutive regenerations, expelling the Toymaker from his body. What happened next during this ordeal is unclear. The novel Divided Loyalties claims that the regenerations forced the Toymaker out of Rallon's body and into a projection of Rallon from the future, keeping his powers under control. With the revelation from the 60th anniversary special, The Giggle, it is possible that in this instance Rallon actually bi-generated, producing a body for the Toymaker and one for himself, essentially freeing himself from the Toymaker's control. On the other hand, the novelised version of The Nightmare Fair does corroborate this. However, the audio adaptation of the novel shows the Toymaker take on a nude body and a new voice. In either case, the toy room was once again destroyed, and so while the Toymaker was waiting for it to repair itself, he went on to Blackpool on Earth, taking up the mantle of the Mandarin. The next time the Doctor would encounter the Toymaker was in his 6th incarnation. With his body regenerated, the Toymaker relocated to Blackpool in the late 20th century, moving onto the Space Mountain thrill ride as his base. He developed a series of arcade games that would kill the players if they lost, with a monster made of electricity which the Toymaker controlled using neural relays. He was stopped, however, when the 6th Doctor and Perry, who had once again been drawn into his games, rallied the surviving prisoners and turned one of the neural relays against the Toymaker, trapping him inside a time loop perpetuated by his own mental energies until he would eventually die of old age. Based on this questionable scoring, it was arguably 3-0 to the Doctor, and it appeared that the Toymaker was now trapped in a perfect prison. However, this would still not be the last time the Toymaker would appear. The next time the Toymaker would encounter the Doctor was in the Doctor's 7th incarnation, as depicted in the Big Finish audio The Magic Mousetrap. In the adventure, the Toymaker was freed by Fenric as the Elder Gods began their games once more. Whether the Toymaker was actually a willing participant in the Elder Gods games, or if he was just a pawn to make things more interesting for them, is debatable, as it depends on the Toymaker's rank and status within the Great Old One's hierarchy. Regardless, the Toymaker opened up another portal to the Toy Room in Switzerland in 1926. Luring new victims including the 7th Doctor, Ace, and Hex. In the toy room, the Doctor took charge, intending to outwit and trap the Toymaker in a wooden doll, and have all 3 victims trapped there, consumed a piece of the doll to divide the Toymaker's essence until he withered away. However, this is exactly what the Toymaker wanted all along, as he wished to absorb their humanity to feel what it is like to lose. Had it not been for Swapnil Khan, the chess master, trapping the Toymaker in a perpetual stalemate, the Doctor and his friends would have been reduced to wooden dolls themselves like the other victims. So the score was now arguably 3-1, still in the Doctor's favour. According to the Doctor Who extended media, the Doctor would go on to encounter the Toymaker several more times in his 8th incarnation. The first encounter would be in the audio story Solitaire with the 8th Doctor and Charlie Pollard, when they were captured by the Toymaker and taken to his shop. The shop was distinctly different to the toy room, as this was the earlier incarnation of the Toymaker, still based in Blackpool. The Toymaker turned the Doctor into a puppet, forcing Charlie to solve the Toymaker's riddle. However, the toy shop was a living entity itself, and not content with its master's control over itself, it tricked the Toymaker into releasing them both and self-destructed, causing the Toymaker's body to be destroyed in the process. In the next encounter, the 8th Doctor was travelling with Izzy Sinclair, and the two of them encountered an even younger version of the Toymaker after he had sealed the village of Stockbridge in 1996 in a snow globe. He then used an alien device called the Imagininium, which could create duplicates of places and people, to create a fake version of Stockbridge within the toy room. The Toymaker also created a superior version of the Doctor within this fake version of Stockbridge. However, the Mirror Doctor was convinced by the 8th Doctor to help them stop the Toymaker, knowing that the Toymaker would eventually kill him when he tired of him. Using the Imagininium again, the Doctor created a superior version of the Toymaker, locking the original and the mirror version in a stalemate. The Toymaker later encountered the Doctor again in his 12th incarnation. As he was fearing that the toy room was breaking down and would leave him without a home, the Toymaker reached out to the 12th Doctor and Clara under the guise of Susan Foreman, hosting a family reunion. However, the Doctor was not fooled by the versions of Susan and his former companions, and so the Doctor challenged the Toymaker to a game of Truth or Dare. The Doctor chose Truth, forcing the Toymaker to reveal his fear of losing the toy room, and wanting to use the TARDIS to contain it, essentially reinforcing the structural integrity of his domain. Thinking he had outwitted the Doctor, the Toymaker dared the Doctor to give him the TARDIS in a shocking move. The Doctor, however, did so, materialising the TARDIS around the toy room and containing it within the Zero Room. However, the Doctor then ejected the Zero Room with the toy room inside, knowing that it would reinforce the Toymaker's domain whilst also leaving him still with the TARDIS. On this occasion, the 12th Doctor even expressed sympathy for the ancient being, knowing what it was like not to have a home. The next canonical encounter with the Toymaker, as listeners of the podcast will know, encountered in the events of the Giggle, where the 14th and 15th Doctors did battle with the Toymaker when the 14th Doctor accidentally let the Toymaker into the universe by invoking the superstition of salt. The 14th and 15th Doctors challenged the Toymaker to a game of catch, which the Toymaker eventually lost. However, before the Toymaker's ultimate defeat and imprisonment in the toy box, he declared to both Doctors an ominous warning. His legions were coming. So who are the Toymaker's legions? So we can assume that the toys and prisoners seen in the Giggle are not the Toymaker's legions, as they were either released or destroyed with the toy room. However, the novelised version of The Church on Ruby Road elaborated somewhat on the Goblins' origins, where the 15th Doctor hypothesised that the Goblins were members of the Toymaker's legions, having followed him into this universe when the 14th Doctor opened the way for him at the edge of the universe. So, if that is to be taken as lore, the Goblins are the first of the Toymaker's legions that we've currently seen, which sets a profile for the rest of his legions. According to Russell T Davies, the upcoming season will contain villains closely resembling creatures of myth and fiction, with the ability to alter reality in similar ways to the Toymaker. Additionally, an online theory on Reddit suggested that the Cyberlords may also be part of this legion, as the Toymaker played against the Master, so he could very well have won the Cyberlords off of him in their game. This doesn't necessarily fit the supernatural theme, but it would be interesting. Additionally, Jinx Monsoon's character, the Music Meister, has been teased by the teaser trailer that we reviewed in a previous episode to be a power beyond this universe, heavily implying that the Music Meister will be part of the Toymaker's legions. Another cryptic clue from RTD in the interviews was that these legions will be like a pantheon of gods. So does this indicate that the Elder Gods may make up part of the legion? It is possible, especially since RTD is known for trying to link the main show with the storylines from the audios. However, I personally think that it is unlikely for several reasons. The first is that the last time the Elder Gods rubbed elbows with the Toymaker, it seemed more like Fenric was using the Toymaker as a pawn in his games, rather than as one Elder God teaming up with another. Additionally, the Elder Gods are from the pre-universe, which occupied the dimension that the main universe now does, and had different laws of physics, given the Elder Gods and other survivors of the pre-universe godlike powers in our universe. So, this does fit the description of the Legion. However, historically, the Elder Gods are a competitive race of beings that often fight each other, not alongside one another. Additionally, as the Toymaker, while he is a great old one, hasn't been confirmed to be an Elder God, the Elder Gods likely view him as inferior. However, this does feed into an upcoming case of who is the one who waits. Another question we have about the Toymaker's legions is, was Beep the Meep one of the Toymaker's legions, serving as some kind of herald before the Toymaker's arrival in our universe? Again, I don't think that this is likely. I think it's more likely that the boss that Beep referred to is actually the one who waits, because if Beep were working for the Toymaker, it's likely that they would have confirmed this in the 60th anniversary rather than dragging it out into the new series. So in conclusion, we know very little about the Toymaker's legions. What we do know, however, is that they are extra-dimensional, godlike, mythical beings that share similar powers and abilities to the Toymaker to varying degrees. The goblins being relatively weak, while Jinx Monsoon's villain has been teased to be a lot more powerful. However, in line with RTD's policy of keeping things heavily under wraps until the days leading up to the premiere, we will all have to wait and find out more. Who do you think may be part of the Toymaker's legions? Let us know on Instagram, TikTok, or in the Q&A sections on Spotify. If you liked today's episode, please leave a like and subscribe to the podcast. And as always, see you next time on Tardisian Files.